Hey guys, real quick, wanted to do a video on perception of power and how this applies to especially young kids. Okay, so talking about lower body mechanics, talking about drive leg mechanics, a lot of kids come up to me and ask in regards to, I want to use my legs, I want to feel explosive, I want to feel powerful, and all these great things that are, you know, not necessarily bad to feel, obviously, because they're all very positive words, but there's I see a common trait, especially like I said, with among the young kids, in terms of what are they perceiving as powerful within their delivery. Okay, so especially with like 15U kids who obviously know, and I would say it's like more common as far as like, I want to use my legs when you're 15U, because a lot of coaches, you know, at the high school level will say something like, hey, use your legs. Well, what does that mean? So like I said, talking about perception of power, first thing that we see is within the drive leg mechanics. So as soon as we descend from the peak leg lift and we really load up the drive leg, more oftentimes than not, kids, in terms of feeling like they're using their legs, is they're shooting for a contraction of the muscle. So in order to feel more of a contraction of the muscle, what they start to do is they just start to put more weight over that specific targeted area, which is the drive leg, for a longer duration of time. Now, everything that I'm going to say here isn't necessarily going to be quote unquote bad. Always, when we're looking at the pitching mechanics, always going to come down to optimal, suboptimal, and that's going to vary depending on the individual, right? So certain individuals can have a movement that is, the way that they do it is perceived efficient because they do it at a high level and they do it right, but someone else that goes to do it doesn't always look the same, right? That's why not everyone throws the same. But in regards to the drive leg, you see these kids who are shooting for a specific sensation of drive leg contraction, muscle contraction, and the longer that they can hold that more just weight over the drive leg, the longer they can feel that contraction. So then they perceive that as using their leg. And I want to just say there's a specific danger that is involved within that first movement of loading up drive leg and holding drive leg for as long as possible until we get into our anchor point. Now, the danger of that is you are essentially telling your brain that we're trying to defy forward gravity. Remember, velocity is force times acceleration. Yes, we're putting a lot of force into the ground if we hold this weight over our backside and stay counter rotated with our trunk and tilt and all this stuff. Might be applying a lot of force, but in terms of the acceleration, you're defying forward acceleration. All right, you may be feeling a sensation of loading that drive leg, and that feels powerful. Or even the other component that I see a lot with kids who initially sink all the way to the max that they can sink within this little move here. If you were to draw like a box around the guy and they leg lift and then sink all the way down and then move, you're not going to be, you're defying your forward acceleration, right? So yes, we want to load up our drive leg. Now that's going to look differently for everybody, accelerators and drivers. Identify what you're better at, better equipped to do. But as soon as it comes time to then stabilize, absorb, store energy, like we got to then start getting going. And if you were to look at like how we can accelerate our body to the maximum potential, if we look at the way that the slope is organized, we want to continuously sink our hips with that slope. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because a movement like that isn't necessarily perceived in someone's mind as powerful or using their legs. But when we're looking at the optimal mechanics of the lower body in order to initiate an energy system and then to block that energy system to send it up, that's what we need to do efficiently. Now, I think for me, it always is going to go back to what your main goal of your delivery is between accelerating and driving. I think for a lot of kids who, you know, obviously you don't want to keep it, you want to keep it super simplistic, but for a lot of kids, you want to have the understanding of what they're trying to do. And if they're trying to feel their legs, then that perception of that can get kind of skewed. Now, the second component of perception of power that I see as a breakdown with these kids is any type of movement that usually that is involved in power is an elevation, right? You think about like an elevated jump going up, you think about like the contraction and then the concentric explosion going up. And that's the same thing when we look at the hip rotation mechanics and the breakdown. That's a possibility breakdown with these kids of a false perception of power, where they load up the drive leg and then their perception of power tells them to explode and elevate their hips. Remember, in order to optimize our lower body mechanics and to optimize our acceleration rate going down the slope, we want to continuously be sinking down the slope into our anchor point. Okay. Now, if we elevate as a perception of power of like, okay, now it's time to explode, and we elevate, we want to push off the ground, then that's going to not only take us away from our maximum acceleration rate, but it's going to take our energy distribution and it's going to elevate it when we're trying to sink and stay on top and explode down. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of issues potentially with the perception of power, and we just want to make as simple as we can without completely overloading someone, especially like at 15U, completely overloading their brain. We just want to simply put the understanding of what we're trying to do within our lower body mechanics for them to then develop their own personal cues. Okay, so hopefully that part makes sense. I'm going to throw some cheddar cheese here at the 11. Elevate, boom, sink, cheddar. That was my first throw of the last 3 days, and I felt pretty froggy. See you guys.